because that did seem to, we're alive. That did seem to trigger a bad reaction on their part. So if we do it again, maybe that will motivate them to show up. So I will ask if the board wants that for May, but other than that, I really don't have. This may set a speed record for a meeting.
Just remember, you guys are being broadcast right now.
Also, I guarantee you, just based on this woman like regularly puts down like a 30 pack of natural ice, which is the real gateway drug. Sorry to dump that vitriol on you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm fine. I mean, I'm neglecting constituent calls right now.
Good.
Yeah. I have one guy that keeps calling, and I think he just likes to talk to me, but he kind of is like disgruntled. But then I feel like I keep not giving him. I guess, yes. My job is gruntling him. And his wife also yells to the phone.
Oh, in the background?
In the background every time. And I always wonder, I try to call at random times, but
Okay, so this is, which I kind of figured out from context clues.
how's life?
Oh my God, Nmdot turned into like a comfortable experience today, which I was not
Oh my God, you
expecting.
have Murph board and the same thing.
It's so nice. I get to be with my niece right now. So
Good to hear.
he's on this board.
This board?
He's a member. And I asked Andrew, I'm like, if he shows up, do I have to move his chair? And he just,
Yeah, he was missing a meeting this morning, so.
okay, so I feel so bad.
Because I could be fired.
Neither Chief Smith nor Chief Dominguez were there, and their versions of to leave from our
City manager can fire me, yeah.
and DC Danes.
You couldn't stop him from doing it. That's not 4. You need 4 of them.
Really?
And I had no idea. Maybe I'm not allowed to know. I don't know how OM. So this is all part of the open meetings. Moved it because they're trying to
Very unusual, but he's late, so I kind of don't think he's going to be here. I do not. He's usually here by now if he... We are right now, yeah.
That's what's happening with the SMB too. Exactly,
This
exactly.
This has to be a block. Like, there's no. But everyone's just like. It was like very contained, but these were like cops and firefighter chiefs. You know, not really, but so it went on for a while, and then finally I was like, hey, I'm not making this a stage thing, but right now I feel like it's a really tense Thanksgiving, and all the parents and aunts and uncles are super pissed, and everyone's like, oh, and I'm like, okay,
Break the tension.
I'm the new kid here, and it's like, look, I think it's time for the city of Las Cruces to up the stakes and boundaries, and then just walk away. Someone said, no, I can fight for this, I'm going for this, and I was like, look, I don't know. I was like, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm still figuring out where I can tread and where I can't. I'm allowed to talk, but if I have any capacity to interface with that or whoever is, like, I assure you I will do it.
That's exactly the thing that's happening. And so I get like an angry message from Clint last night. The city budget.
Mr. Chair, I show 1 o'clock and we appear to have a quorum.
All righty. Thank you, Andrew. It's 1 p.m. on April 13th, 2020. 2022, and we'll call this meeting of the Mesilla Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board to order. If you all would rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and if we can get a roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Counselor Corrin,
Here.
Counselor Graham,
Here.
Counselor Bencomo,
Here.
Trustee Johnson Burek,
Here.
Trustee Merrick, Mr. Chair.
Present.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Very good. Are there any members of the board that have any conflict of interest in today's agenda?
No.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is our public comment. Are there any members of the public here for any comment? It does not look like we have anybody, so we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is the approval of the agenda. If I can get a motion and a second for approval.
Move to approve, Bencomo.
Second, Graham.
All right, we have a motion by Councilor Bencomo, seconded by Councilor Graham.
For the record, Mr. Doolittle has arrived.
Just in time. All right. So can I
I'll let
get a
him
roll call?
get seated, and then I'll start at the other end. Counselor Corrin,
Yes.
Counselor Graham,
Yes.
Counselor Bencomo,
Yes.
Trustee Johnson Burek,
Yes.
Trustee Merrick,
Yes.
Mr. Doolittle, voting on the agenda.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. All right, we have an agenda. All right, agenda item number 6, which is our approval of our minutes, the meeting minutes of February 9th, 2022. If I can get a motion and a second for approval.
Move to approve, Bencomo.
Thank you, Councilor Bencomo.
Second, Trustee Johnson Burek.
Thank you, Trustee Johnson Burek and Vice Chair. Are there any comments or changes to the meeting minutes from February 9th? All right, I'm not hearing or seeing any. So can I get a roll call on the meeting minutes, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Counselor Corrin,
Yes.
Counselor Graham,
Yes.
Counselor Bencomo,
Yes.
Trustee Johnson Burek,
Yes.
Trustee Merrick,
Yes.
Mr. Doolittle,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. All right, those meeting minutes are approved. All right, we're on to our action item section of our agenda. It's 7.1, a resolution 22-02, a resolution designating a subcommittee to review and report on an update to the MPO bylaws.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Andrew Ray for MPO staff. This is a follow-up to the presentation that I gave at February's meeting, which was the last meeting of this board, to set up a review process for a subcommittee to review and update the MPO bylaws. Just as a brief refresher, with the acceptance of the new MPO JPA, it's now necessary for us to review and update the bylaws to get them into conformity to reflect the new provisions of the JPA. And also, there's a number of changes, sort of administrative changes that staff wishes to make to improve the operational integrity of the MPO. Per the conversation that I had with the board at the February meeting and following up with conversations with the town of Mesilla, subsequent to that, the proposed subcommittee is Chair Sanchez, who will represent Doñana County, Trustee Merrick, who will represent the town of Mesilla, Counselor Graham, who will represent the city of Las Cruces, District Engineer Doolittle, who will represent Nmdot, Mr. Mike Bartholomew, who is the administrator of Roadrunner Transit, who will serve in the capacity of TAC chair, or will serve because of his capacity as TAC chair, Ms. Christina Ainsworth, who is the Community Development Director for Doñana County, will serve because of her capacity as TAC vice chair. Then Mr. George Pearson, who is the City of Las Cruces representative on the citizen representative on the BPAC, will represent in his capacity as vice chair, or BPAC chair. Everything I just said was incorrect. And then Ms. Ashley Curry, who is the town of Mesilla citizen representative on the BPAC, will serve in her capacity as BPAC vice chair. I am hopeful that there will only need to be 2 meetings of this subcommittee. Obviously, if need be, there will be more. The first meeting, which I hope to get scheduled for before the end of this month, is the kind of intended to be the longer one, where we will go through all the issues, make all of our presentation to the subcommittee and discuss the issues that we see in some detail to build consensus on the final draft. Then staff will take the information gathered at that first subcommittee meeting, create that draft, and then bring that draft to a second meeting of the subcommittee, hopefully to gain consensus from the subcommittee that the draft is ready to go through the full MPO committee process. Realistically speaking, the earliest that we'll probably be able to bring the draft of the new bylaws to the policy board is going to be June 8th. May is going to be, we're not going to be able to have it done that quickly, but hopefully maybe by June. We definitely want to have a draft ready to go by the August 10th policy board meeting. The policy board does not meet in July, so that should be a reasonably attainable goal to get it before this committee, or excuse me, before this board, before August 10th. I will say that if this resolution is adopted today, I'm going to be reaching out to all of the subcommittee members, hopefully before the end of the day, but definitely by tomorrow, to try to get the first meeting scheduled. I do want to say here at the outset, though, that I'm not going to try to get 100% attendance. If it's not feasible to do so, we'll try to get the maximum amount of attendance, but if it's not possible to get all 10 people there, then we'll just have to move on, and I'll catch the subcommittee members who are not able to participate up separately. So just with that caveat, that concludes my presentation, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay. Councilor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the packet, Exhibit A, so that's page 45 of 48, I ordinarily wouldn't quibble about this, but I am the Becky with an I.
Oh, I
instead of Becky with a
apologize.
Y. No, not at all, but we're having a hard time keeping it all. Oh, nice. So sorry, she is firmly not itting it on being on this committee, which I am excited to be on this committee, but yeah, just to try to keep things straight, because.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Counselor. We will get that corrected and pay closer attention to that going forward.
Oh, no worries. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. All right. Are there any other questions, comments for Mr. Ray? Okay. Now I'll take a moment to apologize. Apparently, now that you asked, and I start looking at, if you hear the noise in the background, it appears there's a little bit of action going on in the rotunda here at the commission chamber, in the government center. It looks like there's a man lift going up and down. I don't know what kind of maintenance they're doing, but that's what appears is going on. I thought it was a. Yeah. So, okay. So, all right, so we're on, so if there's no other questions or comments, I'll ask for a motion and a second for approval of this resolution.
So moved, Graham.
Motion by Councilor Graham,
Seconded by Corin.
seconded by Councilor Corrin. Okay. All right, well then if we can, if there's no other questions or comments, then we'll ask for a roll call on Resolution 22-02.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Counselor Corrin?
Yes.
Counselor Graham?
Yes.
Counselor Bencomo?
Yes.
Trustee Johnson Burek?
Yes.
Trustee Merritt?
Yes.
Mr. Doolittle?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Very good, thank you. Okay, we're on our discussion items now, 8.1, which would be our Nmdot safety data presentation. And I believe, is this the one that we will have to reschedule?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I apologize, but Nmdot Safety Data Bureau is not able to be with us again today. There was another scheduling conflict that came up. I do want to ask the board if the board wants me to go ahead and bring that resolution that was originally discussed at the January 2022 meeting. If the board would like for me to go ahead and bring that resolution forward for consideration at the May Policy Board meeting. Looking at the calendar, we are already nearly halfway through this year. And the intention, as was expressed to me in January, was that there was to be a follow-up local governing board process to take that through before submission to the state legislature. So we do have to be mindful, unless the will of the board is different now, that there's still a couple months of process that we need to go through here, keeping with the original intention before this can go to the legislature. And we're already nearly halfway through this year, and so the legislative session is, in a way, coming up on tippy toes. So I wanted to ask the board if I should go ahead and bring that resolution, or...
I'll at least speak for myself and allow the rest of the board to speak. And I did want to bring up, at least for Trustee Merrick, one of the issues that we've seen, or at least we raised, is that when we are looking at safety data that's reported here, well, throughout the state, but particularly here within the MPO jurisdiction and service area, is that all of our data is 2 years in arrears. So if there's an accident today right outside of the government center here, we won't see it on our data until 2024. So we were trying to see what we could do to encourage some changes within that process so we can get more real-time data. We can start try to be more proactive in affecting changes here in our communities. And so that was this, we were hoping to get this presentation today from the DOT to understand how is that data flow, how does it flow through the state to the department and down? What are the potential challenges? But the resolution that Andrew was discussing is that we were trying to get a resolution to really kind of push those changes from happen, at least through our legislators, through the state representatives, and through Nmdot. So that was what we had discussed back in January, but we haven't been able to get all the information so that we know what our best course of action is to take. So with that said, at least what my initial thought, Andrew, is this, is I would like to see, at this point, exactly like you're saying, we're already going into May. If we have the presentation, I would love to see the presentation happen in May before we do a resolution, so that then we can make the decision as a board that if we want to make amendments to that resolution, we can do that real time and approve it in our May meeting. But at least that would be my thought, is let's hopefully have that presentation, bring forward at whatever resolution might be existing, and we can make those amendments here.
What we could do, Mr. Chair, it's kind of a Robert's Rules issue. We in the agenda, we would still have to list the action items first, but what we could do is, if Nmdot is able to be here, we could, within that agenda, postpone that action item until after the discussion item. But we would still have to advertise it as coming first in the order, but it can be postponed. So that is what I will do, Mr. Chair. I will, as we had originally talked about for February, I will work with you on the specific language of the resolution so that we can have that ready to go.
Okay, very good. And I don't know from the rest of the board if there's any suggestions or a different approach that would be suggested. Okay. All right, so we'll do that then. Okay, then I guess with that, then we'll move on to discussion item 8.2, which is our MPO officer evaluation process presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As part of the new JPA, there is now a role created for the policy board in the evaluation of the MPO officer. I want to start off with an apology to the board. I had intended to bring a sample template that was exclusive to Mesilla Valley to this meeting, but unfortunately I have been so swamped with bylaws and UPWP that I have not been able to do so. So all I've been able to bring today is the template from the El Paso MPO that we're using, or the intention was to use as the basis for the evaluation of the Mesilla Valley MPO officer position. Going through here, and I don't know if anybody's had the chance to look at the line items in detail. Most of them would be applicable across from the El Paso MPO to ours. There are a number that would not, and so my intention is to bring at the May meeting an actual dedicated sample for this board to look at for the Mesilla Valley MPO. I do want to say that we are going to have to take a mulligan on this particular JPA provision for this year, because the evaluations for City of Las Cruces staff typically start in April, so I'm expecting them any day now. Obviously, we're not going to be able to get this in line in advance of that, and we do need to have the policy board take an action to sign off on whatever process we come up with in order to firmly put it in place. So that's going to put it past the deadline when the City of Las Cruces is done with its evaluations for this year. I apologize for this. The reason for that is because everything that I was told was that not to anticipate that the JPA was going to be approved by the state until May. So I didn't think that this was going to be an issue that we would be facing just yet. So I did provide this in everyone's packets. So if any of you have any questions or comments about the contents of this, please do let me know. But this will be back as a discussion item at the May meeting with an actual Mesilla Valley MPO template ready for consent for an action at the June policy board meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions or comments on what's proposed here in the agenda? Okay. Doesn't sound like it. So at least we'll have that, and we'll look forward to having it back in May. Is there anything else on this item, Andrew?
No, that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chair.
All right. Okay, well then we're on to section 9, our board and staff comments. Section 9 or agenda item 9.1, which is our Nmdot update. Mr. Doolittle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of quick project updates. New Mexico 404 I-10 down here in Anthony continues to be ongoing. They're working on the second bridge. We're having a little bit of delay. We're on a partial suspension while they evaluate some of the work that they did, specifically the driven piles for the pier caps. But we're still scheduled to be finished in this summer. And then once we finish that, then in August, we're going to bid the New Mexico 404 corridor, which will be a 4-lane divided highway. Again, one of my #1 priorities just because of the safety and the head-on collisions that we have in that area. But that's scheduled to bid this fall. The other one, we really don't have any more construction work going on in the area. Oh, yes, we do. I'm sorry. I-25 milepost 14 to 24, which is just north of town. The contractor is scheduled to start their paving next week. They've been out doing some measurements and core samples and those kinds of things, but they'll start paving next week. So you'll see a little bit of work out there, but that's that area that's gotten really rough. We're starting to use the seal coat on it. It's real loud. But anyway, we're going to start that next week. The other one I wanted to touch on briefly is the I-25 corridor study. That's the one from Lowman to Doniana and then Thorpe Road through Doniana itself. They had a stakeholders meeting on April 11th, which was just this past Monday, with Doniana County, City of Las Cruces, EBID. I was unable to attend due to another event that I'll go over here shortly, but we are getting ready to start our public meetings. Mr. Chair, I did reiterate to the consultant to make sure, so they're going to do 2 meetings. One is going to be virtual. That one will focus mostly on the I-25 corridor. But they are going to do one in-person meeting in Doniana to specifically address the Thorpe issues. They were going to do that one virtually as well, but after hearing some of the comments at our public meeting that we had, the community meeting and access to internet and computers and those kinds of things, we modified that one and it will be in person. So as soon as we get those scheduled, I'll be sure to, Amy, our PIO, will send out notices, but I'm sure Mr. Chair, you'll be invited specifically to that one.
Okay, no, very good, and I appreciate you pushing that, making that effort, because I know, as you were exactly right, the community is very interested in, and it'll be difficult for everyone to be able to get online, so being in person will be a huge benefit to the community, so thank you.
And in the whole scheme of things, Mr. Chair, the Thorpe Road section is a very small part of this massive corridor study, and I don't want the community's interests to get lost in, you know, a nat grade crossing at Madrid and improvements to US 70 and I-25, those kinds of things. I don't want these, you know, ADA sidewalk lighting issues to get lost in the big corridor. So that one will they'll cover both aspects at both meetings, but the virtual one will focus mostly on the I-25 corridor, the interchange itself at Doniana. And then the in-person will focus very specifically on sidewalks, crosswalks, lighting, those kinds of things that we discussed at the community meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Trent.
Two quick items that we've had just this past couple of weeks. This week is Work Zone Awareness Week. Today is Go Orange Day, so I'm trying to dress up like a barrel. I don't know, that's a good idea considering people try to run over them, but this is Work Zone Awareness Week on Monday. The reason I missed the stakeholders meeting is New Mexico DOT and TxDOT did a coordinated press conference at the Anthony Welcome Center. Very successful event, turned out really nice, trying to bring people's awareness to our workers in the work zone, but also to try to remind our employees not to become laxed when they're doing the work. Just last month at our State Transportation Commission meeting in Roswell, our District 2 engineer played a video in memory of one of his employees that was hit and killed just a few months ago. Doing normal routine maintenance, ran up behind her and killed her. So I just want to remind everybody, be respectful of our employees, slow down. It's not worth a few minutes of time to slow down through those work zones, so just be careful. The other one, I wanted to end on a high note. At that same Transportation Commission meeting, our University I-25 project was recognized with the Envision Award. It's a national award for sustainability, coordination, with City of Las Cruces, NMSU. That Envision Award is the first one ever for the state of New Mexico. So very, very good for our team. I appreciate Moles and Corbin really pushing to submit that award. We've been working on this for about 8 years now. Those stipulations tied to sustainability and reusing our materials and soft lighting, those kinds of things. It's 8 years in the works. And so that was a nice recognition for the team. We are in the process of submitting an application for the Western Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, WASHTO. It's another national award. So I'll be sure to keep you all in the loop, but good recognition for the state and for the community. So I appreciate all the partnerships that we've had in getting that project complete. We are finished with that one, a few small items to close it out, but we're finished. NMSU still working on their landscaping, the archways and the bridge between the two to clean up the connection of the multi-use path and the sidewalks, but very nice project overall. Mr. Chair, I don't have anything else, but I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Doolittle. Are there any questions for Mr. Doolittle? All right, doesn't seem like there are, so thank you, Trent.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mr. Chair.
it. Okay, then we're on to 9.2, which is our board members' updates. Are there any updates from the board members?
I have a quick update somewhat related to the conversation about the I-25 70 corridor. I think that the city council approved the moving forward to apply for a raise grant to address the I-70 sort of Elks 25 as part of the bigger picture of the North 25 north of the city movement. So with luck, that raise grant will land us some infrastructure funding to support, especially sort of revising the pedestrian access and making that corridor a little safer for folks within the city. So I just wanted to add that to the list of things happening there.
That's great. Thank you, Counselor.
Mr. Chair, if I can expand just a little bit on that. So we currently do have a project in the STIP, which will take care of our facilities basically from where the Spitz Three Crosses project ended through the Elks Traverse intersection, basically widening to 3 lanes, access control, those kinds of things. So in cooperation with the city, it is their application. We provided a letter of support for the application, but if they're awarded any money, it will be included as part of our project and we'll manage the entire corridor as a whole. So I appreciate the partnership. I appreciate that the city is coming forward with some money and some involvement in that project, but if there's anything I can do to help out, I've been in close contact with David and Rudy, so if there's anything I can do to help out, let me know, but we'll cross our fingers and hope we can get some money.
Excellent. All right, are there any other, Counselor Bencomo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been doing some work to bring some revitalization to the West Picacho corridor. And I wanted to bring forth an issue that I keep hearing from constituents, though I am sure I'm not the first one to talk about this, Trent. You probably know what I'm going to say. One of the biggest things I've been hearing are the medians down West Picacho, and that they have really crippled small businesses, and just the challenges that those medians pose when, people can't turn directly into small businesses, and wondering if there is a path forward to remediate that. And so I just wanted to bring that issue because it's one I hear consistently. And again, I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard of it. So I'm curious if we can talk about that now, or, I did want to bring it forth as a major issue.
Mr. Chair, Counselor, if I can just make a general comment, I guess, and then we can talk about the details later. First, I'm guessing you're specifically talking about between Valley and the railroad tracks? Yep. Okay. So back in like 2000 is when we built that section of roadway. And at that point in time, the public and the businesses in that area were very specific. They wanted on-street parking. There's not enough room there to allow on-street shoulder parking and allow for a a dual left lane in the middle. Probably 6 or 7 years ago, we were approached by some of the businesses who wanted to remove the curb. Ultimately, it didn't get anywhere. There wasn't enough support for removing it. My recommendation is we probably need to go to the public again and see what the consensus is. But it's really going to have to be a choice between the businesses and the community, whether they want a a dual left turning lane, or whether they want on-street parking, because we can't have both. And honestly, a lot of the local citizens that live in the area, they're the ones who are adamantly against the median because they didn't want those businesses then parking on their side streets and their driveways, those kinds of things. But we can go either way, but we really need to get the public involved in that discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Trent, I don't believe there is street parking along that portion of the corridor on West Picacho.
There is. It's only up to about, one block, let me think for a minute, one block east of Valley Drive. We don't have parking because then we've got to do the left turn lanes and those kinds of things. But from that antique shop all the way to the railroad tracks, there is on-street parking.
Okay.
It's tight, but there is on-street parking.
Okay. Is there a formal process, Trent, to like a petition, some sort of something?
So I've scheduled a coordination meeting with Doña Ana County and City of Las Cruces staff for the first week of May. I will find out before then what the process is. I don't know. In the past, it basically came from a few emails and.
Okay. On the city level, if we want any street calming measures, there has to be like, what is it, 75% or something of the constituents who live on that road have to sign a petition. But I didn't know if that would be the same given that it's an Nmdot.
We typically, we accept petitions into the public comment record, but it's really going to be based on engineering judgment, those kinds of things. It's probably going to have to be one of those dual efforts where we maybe bring it up to city council and we get input there before they come to us. I'll have to find out. I've never really been in the situation where we've been asked to overturn something that the citizens asked for in the first place. I'll try to find out, and then I'll be sure to share that with David, and then I'll have an update at the
That'd be
next
great.
Policy board meeting.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Bencomo. Are there any other comments? I just have one, and Trent, I'll probably follow up with you maybe a little more with some details. But I know one of the other concerns that have been brought up to me, and I know Councilor Bencomo as well, has been the crosswalk or the crossing at just north of Mayfield at that multi-use path. And there's a couple of things that have been noted there, and I've seen it myself having to drive it is one. When you go northbound on Valley and you reach that area where it starts to curve out, it's hard to tell which way the lane goes because it's almost like the edge, the white line was moved. But when you're during the daytime, it's hard to tell where it goes. Like the old line wasn't removed completely. So that's one thing. But along with it is the transfer, not only because of the speed of traffic right in that section, because once they hit that out of town, they're hitting their gas, the gas, is that people are not stopping and respecting that crosswalk sign. And so what ends up happening, either they're not stopping or they're coming fast, and there's a changeover. You have to actually change from the north side of that ditch to the south side when you cross over. So there's some things in which I think there's been I've noticed a couple of things that have gone up, including some small bollards, or at least that were put up, but wanted to see if there was anything else that you all, that Nmdot might be working on within that area, or if there's anything else we can do to possibly raise the awareness of drivers that there is a crosswalk there, and then other things we can do to protect the safety of those pedestrians that might be crossing.
Mr. Chair, I will tell you, I think that crosswalk is in the city limits. Is that correct? That's south of the drain?
The crosswalk is on the south part of the drain, yes.
So the reason I mention that is we've been working on the road transfer of Valley Drive since we finished the Valley Drive corridor projects. 2 meetings ago at commission, I presented, but I left out the actual road transfer form. And so I have one form I have to do, but ultimately anything within city limits on Valley Drive will no longer belong to the department. I will have my staff look at it because I do have technical experts who are familiar with the situation. Harold Love, for instance, has gotten a few emails regarding that crosswalk. But probably within the next 6 or 8 weeks, it will now be a city facility, not DOT.
Interesting, okay. Yeah, then like I said, I think we can work through the details and try to see what we can do. I think that's been brought up just because I know that's right at the line between the city and the county, and then add in Valley was always a state highway, so
And there
we'll
may
have
be some,
their jurisdiction in just for fun.
right, Mr. Chair, then there may be some issues. So as you're approaching, headed north, there may be some things that the city would have to do on their part, and driving in from the south, we may have to partner on that. So again, I'll have my staff look at it. If there's some striping issues, we do stripe our roads every year, so there may be some stuff that we can try to do to clean that up before we do the road transfer, but I'll have Harold and Maria take a look at it.
Awesome, I appreciate that, Trent. Thank you so much. Yes, absolutely, Councilor Graham.
Thank you. So I use that for me, it's a cross bike. I go probably at least 2 or 3 times a week. And what I think that there is probably general confusion to drivers whether they are supposed to yield, or because I think some interpret the sign as like, hey, heads up, there's a crosswalk, or do I actually have to yield? Very rarely do people yield to anyone crossing there. And as the person on a bike, most of the time I'd rather they don't, because the people behind them, I've seen a couple of near miss rear end situations because people are like, why are you stopping? It's worse. Well, no, I should say it's better when the school zone is activated at Mayfield, at least for that northbound traffic, because they're coming out of that 15-mile-an-hour zone, but they don't still have a lot of time to pick up speed. But yeah, it's an interesting crosswalk, but maybe something as simple as more overt signage, yield to Becky in the crosswalk, or however we want to term that.
And I think that was one of the thoughts is, I think where maybe, because it's not, it doesn't happen every time, if there was even like a light they could activate that let at least a warning sign just to let people know. I mean, I don't know, I think you're right, because I don't know that people understand that the sign indicates that they're supposed to yield. I mean, I think I even saw, was it a few years ago that LCPD had an effort in the city to try to get people to be more aware of the crosswalk. So, but yeah, I don't know, we can maybe come up, like I said, I'd love to just see what we can do. And if there's something even from the county we can help with, I'd love to see what we can do to help with that.
Thank you.
Because I know it's been, I see people use it and I see people get stuck all the time, especially, and it's such a big, major thoroughfare. They can be there stuck for a long time, so.
Mr. Chair, just one quick question on on North Valley Drive specifically. So we have been, we put it in as a request this year, but we didn't have enough funding out of the general office, but we have been requesting to do some sort of corridor study for all of Valley Drive, north through the county area, because we've had concerns about speed and is it too fast, is it too slow? We've got some of the developments moving in. I think it's where Thorpe ties into North Valley. So we are trying to get some money to do a corridor study to see if we need to turn it into a 4-lane, do we do a dual left? Just because it does tend to be growing. So we'll submit an application again this coming year to see if we can actually get that entire area looked at.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Any last chance for board comments? All right. And on to MPO staff updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Andrew Ray for MPO staff. On the subject of the new JPA, there is a provision in there requiring that the MPO officer provide an annual report to the board on the annual quality assurance review that is done by Nmdot planning on behalf of the federal government of the MPO every year. Technically, it is not an audit, but it's kind of more or less the next best thing. I do need to report to the board this year that there will be no QAR for calendar year 2022. Nmdot planning, as of this time, is critically short-staffed, and they do not have the capacity for this year to do the QAR process. I guess the silver lining to this, or the upside, or the positive view of this, is Nmdot planning is very satisfied with the performance of all the MPOs in the state of New Mexico as of right now, so that they don't believe that it's going to be a significant issue if there are no QARs done. But because of the JPA provision, I do need to notify the board that there will be no QAR for this year. The next item is, everyone obviously is going to be very well aware of the suffering that we have been through over the past half a year, trying to get a new associate planner on board. I'm very pleased to announce that she is finally here with us, Ms. Katerina Provingi. She was actually a co-op with us, one of the few times we've actually been able to bring a co-op directly on board onto full MPO staff proper. So we're very pleased. She's a very good worker. I can say that with assurance from the time that she's been with us before, and she's doing a very good job for us here already. So we're looking forward to great things with her. The next item that I need to announce is the spring 2022 amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP. That is now, the information is now posted on the MPO website. That will be going before the BPAC for their review and recommendation at next week's meeting, then to the TAC at the May meeting, and then will be brought here for action at the May meeting as well. We are in the latter stages of the Transportation Project Fund, or TPF fund process. We have the meetings with Nmdot District 1 and the applying jurisdictions tomorrow. All three of our political jurisdictions applied. None of the NMSU or EBID, none of the other jurisdictions applied, but all three of our political jurisdictions applied. So we will be bringing those through the process, and we'll be bringing those before the board at the May meeting as well. So today's meeting is going to be very fast, but the May meeting is not. So come and bring your popcorn at the May meeting, because it is going to be rather long. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions on the updates for Andrew? Okay, not seeing any. With that, we're on to our second public comment. I don't see any members of the public present at the time, so we'll move on to adjournment. If I can get a motion and a second to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Councilor Bencomo.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Graham. All right, if there's no objections, then we'll call this meeting adjourned at 1:39 p.m. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you all in May.